guys, going to talk a little bit about studied fiction here now. So I've already referred to this particular question from the 2024 exam in a previous video, but now I just want to drill into a couple of sample answers, looking at a couple of novels that maybe some of you might be preparing. Remember, the idea here is that it's you're all doing different texts, but we're trying to develop the kind of skills in terms of focus on the question, interpreting questions, paragraphing, integration of evidence, analysis, critical thinking, reviewing your work. These are all the kind of the skills that if you're a successful English student, you need to develop, or a student of English, you need to develop. So just to reiterate, the question was, using a play or a novel you have studied, describe one key moment when a strong relationship is apparent between two characters. And it was worth 25 marks. So that was a significant chunk of marks, as I said before. And the fact it gave you play or a novel as options meant that, if you go into the exam, you might feel stronger, say, for example, on your play than on your novel. Or if you go into the exam, the opposite might be true. There is a pattern in the last 3 years where they have given you the option to write about either the novel or the play, which I quite like. I always think the more options on an exam, the better, because it allows each individual student to display their strengths. And I keep on coming back to it that English is not like my other subject, history. It's not like geography. It's not like most subjects where the accumulation of information is the key to success. English is a skills exam. So really that's what they should be examining. And this question is allowing you to, have knowledge, but it's really examining your skills. So there was two parts to the question, and again, I showed you the last time, my formatting here was slightly off. Using a play or novel, describe one key moment with a strong relationship was apparent between two characters. And then the second part of that question, I have it here. See the way the box kind of covered it up, but it's here. And it says, do you think both of the characters benefited equally from the relationship? So that was a little twist on the question. And it was the combination of those two elements that was worth 25 marks. Okay, so you have two questions. Are you looking to write 5 paragraphs for 25 marks? I mean, we would love that, but I don't think that's a realistic expectation in the exam. Now, I've written 5 paragraphs here on the first text just to show you how to do it. But remember, time management is of the essence. If you have 25 marks, what you do is you divide that by 5 and multiply it by 3. So that means you have 15 minutes to answer this question, okay? Now remember, why divide by 5 and multiply by 3? Well, because you've approximately got, given the very limited time availability on the exam, you've approximately got about 3 minutes for every 5 marks available to answer a question. So first part, you have to name your novel. Here we go. Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which I'm sure some of you are studying. And this first part is just describing a key moment with the strong relationship. The novel portrays a very strong relationship between George Milton and Lennie Small. Great opening sentence. What does it communicate to me as a reader, as an examiner? It communicates control. You've got to focus on the question. Okay, you've got to focus on that. And you've also got attention to detail. Student knows the names of the characters, and not only their first name, as most students do, but their surname, as very few people do. Lennie is disabled, and George is fiercely loyal to his friend, so that is evidence of the strong relationship. While Lennie causes trouble for George, he will not abandon his companion. The strength of that friendship is evident from the way the novel ends. So there you are, setting up your plan. Now that's an OP, or an opening paragraph. You'll hear me, and I know it's controversial and I get in trouble with some of your teachers, you'll hear me saying over and over again that opening paragraphs are often superfluous. That means unnecessary and add nothing to an answer. But also can be a great hindrance when you're trying to manage the very limited time availability in the exam. So am I being a hypocrite here? Am I talking over myself by writing an opening paragraph? I don't think so. I just wanted to show you what a good opening looks like. You know, I don't think it's over long. It's 3 sentences, and like it gets to the point, and it shows that the core of your answer is going to be on the ending of the novel. So I think it's decent. Then you have 2 paragraphs, and yes, the paragraphs are built around quotation. And I know that many of you don't like the idea of learning quotation, and you certainly don't like the idea of learning it from the novel. And I know that many teachers will say to students, oh, don't worry, you don't need to know quotation. You do. If you're aiming at those higher merits, quotation is evidence that helps you prove points. So whatever your grade aim is, whatever your realistic outcome for English is, quotation will help you reach it and possibly exceed it. Okay? Now I have notes done, very sketchy notes on, sketchy sounds the wrong word. You know, they're not hugely detailed, but I've got notes done on a lot of these texts where I've just taken out key quotes and put them down for your consideration, and they will be available on the platform. So let's have a quick look at this paragraph. We have to show the strong relationship, and we have to show it why it's strong, okay? George and Lenny became friends almost by accident. George describes how him and me was both born in Auburn. I know it his Aunt Clara. She took him when he was a baby and raised him up. When his Aunt Clara died, Lenny just come along with me. So that gives the background to their relationship. So I would regard that as a very, very, very important quote, okay? If I'm doing Of Mice and Men. Because it shows the origin of their relationship and the sense of responsibility that one character has to the other. George's devotion, if you are devoted, it means that you are loyal and there's a strong relationship. To Lenny is clear throughout the novel and is noticed by the boss of the Soledad Ranch, again, lovely attention to detail there, Soledad Ranch, who comments, well, I never seen one guy take so much trouble for another guy. That was meant to be in italics, not in bold. But anyway, there's 2 quotes there. That's a really, really good quote. And, can you imagine going into the exam and you're asked about a strong relationship and you have that quote ready? I never seen one guy take so much trouble for another guy. It is the perfect quote for this question. The strength of that bond, and again, why am I talking about the strength of the bond? The reason I am is because I am always conscious of the fact that in English, the key to success, will I be able to do it? Let's see if I can do it. Yeah. The key to success is to never, ever, ever forget you're answering a specific question. And one of the problems that a lot of students have in English is that they just start telling me a story and they don't seem to be able to bring that information back to the question. That is called narration. That is called paraphrasing. That is called a very quick way not to score well. So as long as your work is always focused on the question, you are much more likely to score well. If your work is then supported by evidence of learning, you're much more likely to score better. And if you can combine that with a sensible approach to paragraphing and control over language, you're going to be in the top grades. So I think that's a good example of how to do it. So you're showing strong relationship, and now you're going to come to the end of the novel, which you mentioned or alluded to in the introduction. This act means that Lenny will be killed by Curly and his friends. George cannot save Lenny. Sorry, I've done that. But still decides to protect his friend. So if he's protecting his friend, it's because he's loyal to him. And if he's loyal to him, it shows the strength of their relationship. This leads to the key moment at the end of the novel, which demonstrates the strength of the relationship, never letting go of the question. George will not allow Lenny to suffer at the hands of the mob. He comforts his friends before he raised the gun and steadied it, and he brought the muzzle of it close to the back of Lenny's head. The hand shook violently. He pulled the trigger. Lenny jarred and then settled slowly forward into the sand and lay without quivering. I know it's a long quote, but folks, it is a really, really, really key moment in the novel. If I was to learn just one quote from Of Mice and Men, that would be the quote that I would learn. That is a very important quote. And I defy you to find me a question on junior cycle English fiction, where you couldn't use that quote as part of your answer. Okay? George sacrificed his future. So if you sacrifice your future for somebody, it demonstrates the strength of your relationship. To save his friend from suffering, killing Lenny means that George will be arrested for murder and have to face all the consequences of that act. However, George is selfless and cares only for his friend. That is why the end of the novel is a key moment which demonstrates the strength of the bond between these two men. And what have you got there? A beautiful circular structure. Now there are 25 marks going for this question. And I can't remember actually the marks given whether the first part was, they didn't indicate whether the first part was worth 10 or the second part was worth 15 or vice versa. But generally the second part is trickier. So the balance would be 10 for the first part and 15 for the second part. But let's not worry about whether it's 10 or 15. Let's talk about grade outcomes. For me, that is a distinction level answer. So you're talking about 9 or 10 out of 10 or 14 or 15 out of 15, whichever the allocation is. Now, why is that? First of all, the language. The writer is very controlled. Everything is really clear. The sentences are syntactically correct. Grammar's all accurate, and punctuation bang on. No problems with the spelling either. It's very well written. The second thing is that the work has been done. The use of quotation in particular is very impressive. And remember, while many of you might say, well, Paul, my teacher does make me learn quotes, and you're saying that lots of teachers don't, my teacher does, so well done, that's great, you have a great teacher. The fact is that the vast majority of students who know quotes don't know what they mean. And if they don't know what they mean, it's like me going out to my shed where I have a load of tools that I don't know how to use. So they're basically useless, sitting there gathering dust. That's the same thing with quotation for a lot of you guys. If you don't know what a quote means, then you need to find out what it means. Don't learn something blindly. You're not a machine. You are a thinking, sentient human being, and English will reward you for being a critically aware, analytical human being. So if you don't know what a quote means, you can't use it effectively. Here it's very clear that the student has done the work and knows what the quotes mean. The third thing that really marks this out as an exceptional answer is the structure. There's a clear introduction, there's a clear conclusion, there are links between them. There are 2 development paragraphs, each one has a very specific job. It's clear the student has thought about the skill of writing effective paragraphs. Here we have relevant, informed, clear paragraphs where there's a bit of explanation. So that's what I call, as you know, the Rice rules. So the paragraphing skills are very, very good. The structure skills are very good. But the most important element of that question that would make me go, okay, that's a distinction. There's no question about it. The most important element is the focus on the question. It is purposeful. And it never forgets that everything you say has to be relevant to the question and the discussion. Okay? So that's top quality answer. Now let's have a look at the answer to part B and see how we got on. Now this part here, if we say the first part is worth 10 marks, we're saying this is worth 15. If we're saying the first part is worth 15, this is worth 10. The fact is, it's a trickier question. Now again, as I said, when I did the layout of this, it's a PDF, so I can't move the box. The box came down, or look, I inadvertently put the box down over the top of the question, but it's the same question as this one here. Do you think they benefited equally from the relationship? Let's have a look. Sorry. So look at this. Look at this. No. I do not think George benefited equally from the relationship. Now that's a very strong opening sentence. It's got a really clear tone. It is authoritative, which is a word I've always had as a bit of a tongue twister. It's really good. Okay? So, very strong. He has to act as a parent for Lenny, and his frustration is clear throughout. Now, if you're going to make a point like that, so you're saying his frustration is clear throughout, then I've got to see that you can prove that. So you prove it by referencing key moments, but it's always better if the key moment is supported by a quote, and you integrate the quote into your sentence. In chapter 1, he tells Lenny, and it's always great to have a reference of where a source comes from, Jesus Christ, you're a crazy bastard. Nice simple quote. Later in the same chapter he says, if he finds out what a crazy bastard you are, we won't get no job. So there you can see that Lenny feels, that Lenny feels that supporting George being, the other way around, that George's love for Lenny is harmful to him. It makes his life much more difficult. So I'm making the point here. So there's my, if you think about it with the Rice rules, there's my, or some of your teachers might do the PEQ. It's the same thing. It's just different ways of saying it. There's my relevant point. There's my information. And then this part here is my explanation, and everything's written nice and clearly. RICE, relevant, informed, clear, and explained. There is no doubt that Lenny benefits from George's devotion, and little error there. Let's have a look there. See, there should be a gets, should be an S there. A lot more from the relationship than George. So you're bringing it back to the question. George knows, and then another quote, I could get along so easy and so nice if I didn't have you on my tail. And tells Lenny, you keep me in hot water all the time. Again, it's following up the idea that, he's given more than he's getting from the relationship. However, he will not abandon his friend, and Lenny is lucky to have him. George's attitude is summed up when he says, Jesus Christ, somebody would shoot you for a coyote if you was by yourself. So you can see he's there to protect his friend. In this way, and again, a little reference to the question, it is clear that George and Lenny do not benefit equally from their friendship. So to me, that is a very good answer, but it's not as good as the first part. And it's clearly not as good as the first part because it's a bit rushed and the question is more difficult. The student has maybe over-relied on quotation here. They've done a good job with their quotation, but there's probably not enough explanation just to get top marks. So if I think that part A is worth 15, I'm giving part A 15 out of 15. Okay? Now, if I think that part B is worth, say, let's be harsh, 7 out of 10. No, it's not a merit. It's higher merit. Let's say 8 out of 10. I think that's fair. It's not quite distinction level, but it's good. And it's good enough to be better than a merit. Then I'm getting 23 out of 25 marks. And I'm afraid I have to do this because I don't do great when it comes to calculating in my head. That equals to 92% of the available marks. So I think that's a really good example of a strong answer. If I had given it 7 and 14, then of course the answer would have been 21. And that's 84%. So it shows you how difficult it is to get those distinction grades. And my good pal Dan, who's next door to me right now in the other classroom, Dan might say to you, well, no, I wouldn't give that a distinction. I'd give it a higher merit. And English is a bit like that. So what you're aiming to do is produce answers which are written in language which is clear and easy to understand, which are informed by learning, which demonstrate your understanding of structure, planning, and preparation, paragraphing, and which always stick to the question. And if you can do that, you're going to get the best grade that you can achieve given the circumstances and given whoever's marking your script. But that does, you'll have seen the previous video where I made a video about the criteria for assessment at junior cycle level. That conforms, for me, to a distinction level answer. I'll do another video on the same question on the outsiders. And I might do another one on the weight of water. But we'll see. You might let me know when you start watching these videos whether you find them useful. Okay? Okay.